Alright, so I have told myself over and over again that I'm gonna film making bone broth because some of you guys have asked about it. So I am starting this and hopefully I will get all of this filmed tomorrow and the next day because it is a couple days to get this made. Bone broth is something I use in the kitchen a ton. I use it for rice, mashed potatoes, soups, even if I'm roasting meat in the oven, a lot of the time I'll throw in a little bit of bone broth. So that is something I really like to use. I just finished this whole batch, and this was the second round. So what I usually do, if I have chicken carcasses, I'll throw 3 or 4 of them into this big pot, and then I will cover it with water, add in some carrots and onions and celery, garlic, peppercorn, bay leaves, and all of that. And then I will simmer it for 12 to 24 hours, somewhere in there. Usually I start it at night, let it go all the next day. That evening I will take it off. I'll like turn the burner off maybe at supper time. That night I'll strain it all out and I will put the bone broth in the fridge. That way it can cool. And then I can scoop off the fat layer on top in the morning. Then in the morning I will put it back in the pot, simmer it, get it nice and hot. If I feel like I need to cook it down to make it thicker, I will. But as long as it kind of gelled up in the fridge, then I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'll just get it hot, get it in the jars, and can it. And then after you pressure can, it's got to sit for another 12 to 24 hours on the counter to make sure your seals are really good. So by the end of that, it's been a couple of days. So you guys are going to see me over the course of the next couple days, hopefully can some bone broth, and hopefully I remember to pull out the camera for all the steps. But I'm going to do this a bunch the next couple of weeks because I have got to get all the bones out of the freezer to make space for our other beef cows that we will be taking to the butcher in just a couple of weeks, really. They usually go around the week of Thanksgiving. So I've got a lot of work to do and a lot of bone broth to be made. We do beef broth and chicken broth. So right now I just finished a round of chicken broth. And so now I'm gonna go down to the freezer and get a whole bunch of beef bones. Simmer now for all night and all day tomorrow, and then at the end of the day tomorrow I'll turn the burner off and we'll strain it. So that's pretty much it. I am gonna go ahead and put a lid on this. I do like to let it come to a boil. Now people will tell you that you can or you need to let this sit with apple cider vinegar for, I don't know, a half hour before you bring it to a boil. But because I'm doing such a ginormous pot, it takes about a half hour for this to come to a simmer or a boil. So I just kind of let that do all in one. Because it's such a large amount of water, I do a huge batch all at one time. I feel like it evens out pretty well. So if you're doing a smaller batch, you might have better luck just getting it to gel up and everything if you let the apple cider vinegar sit in there for about a half hour before you bring it to a boil. But we're gonna bring this to a boil, and then I will put it on low and let it simmer for the next 24 hours or so. Okay, so this bone broth has been going now for all night and most of the day. It's about 4:30 now. So pretty soon I'm going to be starting on supper, and when I do, I will turn this off and pull it off the stove to go put it on our cook stove and let it cool over there. And then tonight I will strain it and put it in jars or a bowl or whatever to put in the fridge to have all of those oils you saw floating at the top solidify in the fridge. And then I'll just be able to skim them off in the morning, and then we'll keep making our bone broth. You got a bowl, Charlotte? You cooking too? I see. What are you doing, Shelbs?
I'm feeding her.
You're feeding your baby?
Can you see her?
Yeah, I see her.
Yes,
What are you feeding your baby doll?
She's messy.
She's messy?
Yeah.
Wow, look at all this yummy food. Did you fix that for your baby?
Yeah, and she doesn't eat the long.
Oh.
She can tend to eat.
Okay. Okay, I nearly forgot, but I just grabbed the camera. So I like to use some tongs to pull out all the bones out of here. It just makes it a little easier, and I splash a lot less that way. Otherwise, when you are straining it off, like you're dumping large amounts of bones into a tiny little strainer, and it splashes a lot. So that's what I like to do. So now I am going to be straining this through a fine mesh strainer into a bowl and maybe some jars, and then I'll stick those in the fridge. As you guys can see, all of this fat solidified up here. So I'm just gonna take these lids off and scoop them out. Now, if you wanted to, you could save this fat and cook with it. But I actually already have a whole bunch of pure rendered tallow in my freezer downstairs that I use. So I'm not gonna worry about that today. You could, I will probably just give this to my chickens. But if you have some dogs, you could probably save this and mix it in a little bit at a time with their dog food. That would be a really nice, healthy fat for them. Probably make their coats really nice and shiny. So as you guys can see, it's a really nice, solid. So So this is beef broth. I don't know if I specified that. You will have this a little bit with chicken broth, but their fat it feels different. So I usually just scoop that off and toss it too. You have a lot more from the beef bones than if you were to do this with the chicken. But you will still have some fat on the top with chicken, so it's important to do this with any kind of broth that you make. So when you're pouring these out, it's really handy to have a spatula because they don't actually come out. So everything's just nice and gelled up there. So you need a spatula. I have a child trying to climb into a cabinet. Alright, so we've got the bone broth now on the stovetop, so that is I'm gonna heat it up. As I heat it down, it's gonna melt. It looks really like jello-y right now when you give it a jiggle, but that will all turn back just to normal liquid, and once it's nice and hot, we'll put it in some nice hot clean jars and we'll can it. A full pot of this cast iron stock pot usually fills up 6 to 7 jars for me. I think this will be 6 jars, so that will be pretty good, which is nearly a full canner load of quart-sized jars for my pressure canner. Say hi, beautiful people. Say hi. You can clap. Oh, you washing? Washing? Nice. Can you clap? You can go clap, clap. You're just having fun washing your hands. You're clapping. This is all melted down now and looks beautiful. And I'm going to go ahead and get the pressure canner heating up, and then I'll bring this to a boil. Usually I don't have this trouble.
I need a ring.
Yeah, I do. There we go. Hang on, I turned it the wrong way. I didn't have the ring in it, so I got stuck. So, get your ring in there. That is ready. I gotta put the dial in. There we go. That's ready to go now. And then got my rack in here. And so now I need to fill it with 3 quarts of water. Easiest way to do that, measure with a jar. Then if you can remember, which a lot of times I do forget, if you add some white vinegar to your canner, water bath canner or pressure canner, it will help your jars come out cleaner. And we live on a farm with a well, so we have hard water, and so my jars will come out essentially white, powdered, covered looking if I don't do this, which, I mean, it happens because I forget a lot of the time, but it helps. thing you want to do is bring it to a boil, which it is boiling, but there is a little vent up here, and this has got to, it's pushing out a little steam right now, but once it starts to bubble and push out steam, you're gonna let it do that for about 10 minutes. And then after that 10-minute mark, if you have a weighted, yeah, everybody has a weighted pressure canner. Mine is a dial gauge, so there's two different kinds, just weighted or a dial gauge. So after the 10-minute of steaming, venting as they call it, you'll put that weight on, and then you'll let your dial come to pressure. So it's steaming a little bit now. So after I put the weight on, this will have to come to 10 psi for me, and then it'll have to hold there for 25 minutes. And then after that, we'll start the depressurization process. Okay, you guys can kind of, there you go. Now you can see the steam. So it's been steaming for 10 minutes, so I'm gonna grab my weights. And I always just like to do it with the hot pad. I feel like it's safer, but you probably be fine. Do it with your hand. So now you've got the weight on, and your pressure is gonna be slowly coming up. So I'll check back in a few minutes and see where we're at pressure-wise. Okay, so we are just nearly to 10 pounds of pressure here. So for my stovetop, and kind of what I figured out, since this is only gonna take 25 minutes at 10 pounds of pressure, after it reaches 10 pounds of pressure, I can just about turn it to low, and it should be good and stay at 10 pounds of pressure till time is up. And then after 25 minutes, I'm gonna take the whole entire pot off the burner. You don't move any of the weights or anything, and you let it naturally depressurize. So that takes a long time. So when we do that, I will probably actually leave the house and go do some cow chores, as long as this one's not asleep upstairs. So we're gonna see if we can keep her awake. I didn't time this quite right, but that's okay. So now we are at 10 pounds of pressure. So I'm gonna turn the burner down and set my timer for 25 minutes. This is the constant struggle, huh? Yeah, so you didn't fall asleep. All right, we've got about 4 minutes left on our timer there. Still rocking along on pressure, so that's good. And I thought I might clean these guys up and label them so they don't get mixed up. These are from 2 days ago now. These are some chicken broth that I canned. So we'll get the rings off these and wipe them down and label them. I've got that off the stove now, and I'm gonna let it naturally depressurize. It always makes me think of like an Instant Pot when I'm talking about this, so the natural release depressurize. So you're gonna wait for this dial to come all the way back to 0, and then you're gonna wait even longer for this little guy right here to drop. And at that point, it is depressurized. I don't know why I keep doing quotes. It is depressurized. And then after it's depressurized, you'll have to take off the weight and then let it sit for about 10 more minutes. And then you can take the weight off and like crack the lid a little bit and then like slowly lift it off. The biggest thing you want to be careful of is siphoning, especially since I'm canning a broth, a liquid. If you change the pressure level or the temperature more so too rapidly, it will siphon and suck all of your liquid out, which would be really disappointing. So I let this take a long time to depressurize, come down. If I do this in the evening, I will just like let it sit in the canner until Charlotte wakes me up in the middle of the night, and then I'll come take them out. So this is nothing you need to rush. This is the time to clean up the kitchen mess. So that's what we're gonna be doing as long as Charlotte lets me. I'm gonna label these chicken broth cans from the other day. I'm gonna let that calm down, and I'll check back in with you guys a little bit later. Okay, we are back from doing all of our chores, and I wanted to show you guys the pressure canner. So it is completely depressurized now. That is fallen, so the next step is to take this off. You can use a hot pad, or if you feel safe, you can just use your fingers there on the plastic part. So it didn't make any sort of noises or anything. So this has actually been sitting for like an hour or so. But after you take that off, if it just depressurized, you want to let it rest for about 10 minutes or so before you start to crack the lid. Now, since mine has been off for over an hour and everything's good, I'm going to go ahead and crack the lid open and start letting some of that steam out. Okay, so that's cracked now, so I'm gonna let it rest there for a little bit while I get the counter cleaned up, and then in just a few minutes we'll take the jars out, and then they just have to sit on the countertop for 12 to 24 hours. So I usually just leave them till the next morning when I have time to actually stand there and get them wiped clean and labeled. So yeah, let's see if I can find my counter, because that's a hot mess all on its own. So it's as easy as that. Now they are canned, they are shelf stable. We're just gonna let them cool here for the next 12 to 24 hours. So tomorrow morning, mid-afternoon, I'll probably get these labeled and they can go in the pantry. So they'll look like this. I'll take the rings off and then I'll label what kind of broth. So those ones will be beef broth, and these are some chicken broth I did the other day. Put the date on them and they'll be good. So yeah, if you guys have any questions or anything, let me know. That is the whole process, start to finish. I will write the process down in the show notes, or I will get a blog post written on it. I will try. I can't promise the blog post. But we'll see by the time I get this published and everything. We might have a blog post up. So I hope you guys enjoyed making bone broth with me today, and I'll see you guys next time. You gonna say bye, Shelbs?
Bye.